The fire crackled weakly against the bitter cold of Cathara Prime's night. Dr. Mara Voss sat hunched before it, her medical kit scattered around her like the broken pieces of her resolve. Blood, not her own, stained her hands, her sleeves, the knees of her thermal suit. She had spent 14 hours straight in the makeshift field hospital, patching wounds that should have killed, setting bones that had shattered like glass, and watching 3 of the Cathari pack members slip away despite everything she knew, everything she had learned in 2 decades of xenomedicine. Her shoulders shook. The sobs came quietly at first, then harder, until she pressed her palms against her eyes and let the grief pour out into the freezing darkness. The expedition had gone so wrong. What was supposed to be a peaceful first contact had turned into a massacre when the rival clan attacked without warning. The Cathari, proud, fierce, lupine beings who stood 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and teeth like daggers, had been decimated, and she, the sole human among them, had been helpless to save them all. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the flames, to the stars, to the memory of the pack leader who had trusted her. "I'm so sorry." She didn't hear the soft padding of paws on frozen earth. Tyr had been watching from the shadows between the tents. The cub was small for a Cathari, barely reaching Mara's shoulder, with fur the color of storm clouds and eyes that gleamed amber in the firelight. Tyr's mother had been one of the 3 who didn't make it. The cub had sat silently by the body for hours until the elders had finally carried it away for the funeral rites. Now Tyr watched the human healer, the one who had fought so hard, who had screamed at death itself as she worked, whose hands had been gentle even when they cut and stitched and set bones. The human was crying. Tyr understood crying. The cub had done plenty of it in the hollow silence of the tent where Mother's scent was already fading. But there was something different about the human's tears. They weren't just for herself. Tyr had heard the human apologizing, had seen her collapse after saving Tyr's cousin from the brink. The human cried for all of them. Tyr looked down at the blanket clutched in small claws, a simple thermal weave, worn and patched, the only possession the cub had left of Mother. It still smelled like her, like safety, like warmth on cold nights when the wind howled through the tent flaps. The cub's grip tightened for a moment. Then with careful steps, Tyr approached the fire. Mara felt the presence before she saw it. She looked up through blurred vision to find Tyr standing just beyond the firelight, amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The cub held something in its claws, a blanket, threadbare and precious. "Tyr," Mara whispered, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I'm okay, sweetheart. You should be resting. You've been through—" The cub moved forward without a sound. Not the aggressive silence of a predator stalking prey, but something else entirely. Something reverent. Tyr approached until standing directly before Mara, then with deliberate care draped the blanket around the human's shoulders. Mara froze. The blanket was warm, worn soft by use, and it carried the scent of someone lost. She looked at Tyr's face and saw the cub's jaw trembling, the way the young Cathari fought to maintain composure the way the adults did. But Tyr's eyes, those amber eyes, held something that transcended species, transcended words. Grief recognized. Suffering shared. Comfort offered. "Tyr, I can't," Mara started, reaching to remove the blanket. "This was your mother's, wasn't it?" The cub's small clawed hand stopped her, pressing gently but firmly on her wrist. Tyr shook its head once, then stepped back, still silent. The message was clear: keep it. You need it more. Something broke inside Mara's chest, but in a different way than before. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and felt its warmth seep into her bones. "Thank you," she breathed. Tyr tilted its head, studying her for a long moment. Then the cub did something remarkable. It sat down beside Mara, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the subtle warmth radiating from its fur. Close enough to say, "You are not alone." They sat together in silence, the human and the cub, watching the fire dance and pop. The other Cathari would later say it was that night that the bond truly formed, not between species but between souls. They would speak of how the human healer had given everything to save them, and how the smallest among them had given everything to save her. As the fire burned low, Mara reached out slowly, telegraphing her movement. Tyr leaned into her touch and she rested her hand gently on the cub's head, fingers scratching behind the soft, pointed ears. A low rumble emanated from Tyr's chest, not quite a purr, but something similar. A sound of contentment, of peace found in shared sorrow. "We'll get through this," Mara whispered, more to herself than to the cub. "Together." Tyr pressed closer, and in that simple gesture Mara understood what made humans remarkable in the vast cosmos. It wasn't their technology, their weapons, or their endurance. It was this: the ability to recognize suffering in eyes utterly alien to their own, and the compulsion to ease it at any cost. And perhaps, she thought as exhaustion finally pulled her toward sleep, the universe's other creatures understood that too. Perhaps that's why a predator cub, who by all evolutionary logic should have seen her as prey or rival, had instead offered its most precious possession to keep her warm. The fire crackled on, and two figures slept beneath a worn blanket, wrapped in the quiet understanding that compassion needs no translation.